Jiu entered into the kitchen while Mrs. Lee was cutting vegetables on the kitchen counter. Jiu, Mom? Mrs. Lee. Yeah. How's that annoying brat? Jiu. His temperature is not that high, but he need to eat something before taking the medicine. Mrs. Lee, while busy with cutting vegetables. Oh, the porridge is almost ready. Can you pour 2 portions for you and take it to your bedroom? Jiu. Nay, but will it be okay for us to? Mrs. Lee smiled. He needs to eat medicine. I will find some stupid reason in future to make you feel guilty. Will it be okay then? Jiu looked at Mrs. Lee and tried to read her facial expressions while she was still busy to prepare the ingredients for lunch. A smile of satisfaction was unconsciously plastered on Jiu's face, and being the satisfied kind of absent-minded as she opened the lid of the pot on the burning stove, the hot vapor almost burned her skin. A huge amount of air she inhaled to suppress the pain and tried her best to keep smiling, but didn't dare to look at Mrs. Lee, who was already witnessing Jiu's behavior. Mrs. Lee. Jiu? Jiu. Nay? Mrs. Lee. Help me to wash these vegetables first. Jiu's hand was burning in pain. She tried her best to keep smiling, which was already paled. Silently, she walked towards the sink and started cleaning the vegetables. Mrs. Lee was pouring the porridge into serving bowls. Jiu, don't need to suppress the feeling inside you. It's home, dear. It's the place where nobody's gonna judge you. A doctor can yell in the hospital but can't scream in the kitchen as she burned herself. How could it be a rule? It's unfair. And the next moment, Mrs. Lee took the vegetables from her hand and gently pushed her hand under the running cold tap water. Jiu looked at her with trembling eyes while Mrs. Lee's calm face was only concerned about her wound. I have sent the porridge in your room. The medicine box is in your room, so don't forget to apply the ointment. And Jiu, and I want to stay here. I don't want to go to Seoul. I want to stay at home. I want to be cured by someone like you. Mrs. Lee, after handing me the second degree you would achieve, you can stay here. Yeah, she was strict, she was honest, and she was caring. After all, she was a mother. Mrs. Lee, and don't forget to take the milk with you. There's glass in your room. Both of you need to drink milk. Jiu was choked emotionally. She obeyed Mrs. Lee's word, and after taking the milk packet from fridge, she walked out from the kitchen. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Dr. Lee was waiting for Jiu in the room. His face glowed up as he saw her to enter into the room, but Jiu's eyes were screaming something else. For a moment, she made a quick eye contact with him and she turned her face. Dr. Lee, something happened? Jiu, just take the medicine after you finish your portion of porridge. Dr. Lee, and you? Jiu almost choked. Need to go to the washroom first. Dr. Lee was trying to figure out what actually happened. It's not the time of her. What might be happened to her? He murmured. Jiu, just don't forget to take the medicine and don't wait for me. She shut the door of the washroom and broke into tears. Jiu's heart was heavy for no reason, or it was enough for touching reason for her to be choked emotionally. Her hand was burning too, sitting under the running shower. She was crying her heart out. Hiccups joined her sobbings. And Dr. Lee opened the door of the washroom and found Jiu crying. Dr. Lee yelled angrily, do you want me to go under the shower? Within 5 minutes? With dry clothes. I want to see you. Jiu silently got up, took off her clothes and put on the bathrobe that belonged to Dr. Lee. Jiu came out from the washroom while looking to the floor. In the other side, Dr. Lee was still unaware of the fact, but he received a message from his mother describing the situation quite well. Dr. Lee got up from the bed and walked towards Jiu while Jiu stopped on her position. Dr. Lee, there will be nights when we will need each other. More than being physically intimated, we will be craving for each other's embrace, each other's warmth, and each other's support. While applying the silver sulfadizine ointment. For your kind information, Mrs. Lee Jiu, I have eaten my portion of food and the medicine too. Jiu looked at her wound and then looked at the medicine. It's for second to third degree burn. She raised her palm to check temperature of his forehead, and their eyes met. Tears flowed down from her eyes. She spoke with trembling voice. It's been few minutes. Your temperature is quite normal. And with hiccups, she started sobbing. Dr. Lee embraced her tightly in his arms. Dr. Lee, will you tell me what happened? Jew, nothing bad, but it feels so good in home with mom and dad and you around. The way Uppa had treated me, you gave me the same feeling. Dr. Lee sighed. Oh, I thought you have told my parents that you are that girl who used to bully me. At that moment, the door of the bedroom was knocked. Jew tried to escape from Dr. Lee's embrace, but his grip on her got stronger. Please come in, Dr. Lee said calmly. It was Mrs. Lee. She entered into the room. Jew felt a little awkward as she was still caged by Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee, Mom, please sit. Mrs. Lee smiled and patted on Jew's shoulder while she was still in Dr. Lee's embrace. Jew scrunched herself more into his embrace, feeling embarrassed to show her red, swollen eyes. Mrs. Lee, Jew, wanna tell me something? Jew gently freed herself from Dr. Lee's embrace and looked at her. I'm overwhelmed, but there is something that is stuck in my neck like a thorn. Mrs. Lee, any one of you, would you please tell me? Dr. Lee was about to speak something, but Jew stopped him. Jew, it was me who used to actually bully him in elementary school, and to be honest, though he was transferred from the school, we were in touch, and actually back then I never felt sorry for that, and actually I used to think that I won him and I have the rights. Mrs. Lee, of course, he's all yours, and I should be thankful because you have done a great job of shaping your husband from your childhood. I envy you, girl. Jew, don't wanna scold me? Mrs. Lee, but for what? I need any reason to scold you. Jew, can I hug you? Mrs. Lee, of course. Jew hugged her tightly. Mrs. Lee, complete your MS and return to me. Dr. Lee, but mom, you have never shown this side of you. It's not fair. Mrs. Lee, honey, believe me, you can't digest the reality. Dr. Lee, mom, don't make me feel jealous, but tell me the truth. Mrs. Lee, I always wanted a daughter, but Dr. Lee, are you saying that you have regretted having me as your child? Mrs. Lee, no, I have waited for this day when you would get married, and thank you for bringing my daughter here. Mrs. Lee left from the room with that sweet note. Dr. Lee, Jew, how are you feeling? Jew, lucky to have you in my life, and I'm choked with trembling voice. How are you? Dr. Lee, good, but dehydrated. Jew, let me pour you some milk. Dr. Lee smirked. I'm not in the mood of drinking packaged milk since I'm married, happily. Jew frowned. That's so wrong. You have always told me that men and women are equal in all dynamics, but I have to drink only the packaged milk. How's that possible? Dr. Lee smirked. I'm benefited then. Jew was already blushing. Okay, you win, Dr. Lee, but you have never lost to me. Jew, I want to be cuddled. Dr. Lee took her into his embrace. Would always love to cuddle you. Jew, how are you feeling? Dr. Lee, best. Jew, I would love to fall asleep in your arms and would love to wake up in your arms. Dr. Lee, but as a doctor, I don't think I would be able to do so. What about creating mini me or mini you? Jew, I want both.